Hi everyone, Amer here again with another Mission Impossible episode review. This time I'm reviewing Season 2, Episode 22, which is called The Killing. So we start with Jim getting his instructions from a cigarette machine, and then he goes to his car to listen to the instructions to the tape, which is kind of different. Usually he does it right wherever he picks it up. The mission, to get evidence to put Bert Gordon, who runs a murder-for-hire organization, away for good. We have the regular team this time, using recycled footage for the apartment scene with a weirdly unsteady camera for some reason. I'm not sure why that is. In the apartment scene, we get a discussion of some spookery and gadgetry that's going to be used in the episode, including a sweater with chain mail for Jim to use, and we see that Jim and Cinnamon will become a married couple, the Harpers. We cut to Mr. Gordon receiving a list of names to be offed, business as usual, I guess, for him. And he arrives at the Harper home later that evening for his dinner invitation, meeting a rather provocatively dressed Cinnamon. While he's there, Barney and Willie approach his home, where Gordon's hitman Connie watches TV and plays with his menacing switchblade. Drilling into the windowsill, they pump anesthetic gas into the room, putting him to sleep. They strategically put a bunch of devices around the room and the rest of the house, and then they leave, taking the evidence of their visit with them. Dinner at the Harpers turns a bit uncomfortable as Jim becomes drunk and obnoxious. Suddenly the room goes a bit weird and things get really uncomfortable, with candles blowing, table shaking, glass clattering. Rollin, as Jim's attorney brother, tells Mr. Gordon to just wait until the phenomenon passes. He tells someone named Bobby, go back to sleep as things return to normal in a moment. The other three leave Jim and adjourn to the living room. Rollin explains that Bobby was their little brother who died in a swimming accident when he was really young. And he's still reaching out to his big brothers, even after death, because they have that kind of bond. Jim continues to drink, angering Cinnamon, who asks Rollin to take him upstairs to bed. Once they're alone, Cinnamon decides to become more neighborly with Gordon. An unseen Jim takes pictures of them from outside the window. Cinnamon says she knows who Gordon is and wants him to kill her husband. He flatly rejects her offer and leaves. The next morning, Cinnamon, with a welt on her face, shows him the pictures, and he tells her to get lost, as it's not his problem, whatever issues she's having with her husband. Jim comes over, smacks Cinnamon again, punches Connie, and starts to strangle Gordon, but Connie stabs him with the switchblade. Well, now they've done it. Cinnamon wants to call the police as it was self-defense, but Gordon tells her not to do that, wait until tonight, act worried when her husband doesn't come home, only call the cops early in the morning, and make sure she leaves out the part about coming to Gordon's home, indicating that Connie will take care of all the arrangements. Gordon tells Connie to do the usual with the body and then leave Jim's car at the airport. The usual, of course, is to put the body in the incinerator at Gordon's lumberyard. Connie does so, but fortunately Barney and Willie are there to get Jim out. That night, the IMF gather near Gordon's home, where he and Connie are discussing the potential need to get rid of Cinnamon, too. Cinnamon comes knocking in fear, crying that her husband is back. She saw him, as suddenly there's a terrible IMF-created storm outside. Rollin arrives, wondering what's going on. Lynn says she was just afraid to be alone with the storm, and Rollin is satisfied and starts to head out. But the lights go out in the home, and Rollin says he can feel his dead brother's presence. And an image of Jim is seen in the window. The IMF gadgetry starts to mess with doors, windows, candles, fixtures, furniture, and the ambient temperature. The clock strikes, even though it's not the hour, while Willie climbs a rope to an upstairs room and starts walking, shaking the chandelier. Gordon sends Connie upstairs to investigate, and Willie knocks him out, setting him up with the Jim mask and the similar sweater, and sending him down to Barney. Rollin uses a flashlight to display another image of Jim in a puff of smoke, with a voiceover indicating that Connie is dead and the others who were there will also perish. Cinnamon runs out with Rollin chasing after her, but she falls unconscious. Jim's voice comes from the house, taunting Gordon, who finds him in a room and pumps him full of lead. The mask disintegrates, and Gordon is shocked to find that he actually shot Connie. The IMF make a hasty exit as Jim calls the police. Mission accomplished. I'm going to give this episode a grade of B-. I actually had it rated a lot lower based on my recall of it, but after rewatching it again for this review, I've kind of upped the grade somewhat. I think I had it more kind of in the C- category. So let's start with the good. Actually, no, I'm going to change my mind. I'm going to start with the bad. This episode's kind of a slow mover, I feel, in a lot of ways. Not just towards the end. I'll talk about that in a bit. It's necessary to some extent, but it's still there, and it's padding. Barney and Willie, for example, gaslighting the house and putting all of their gadgets there. That took a while. The scene at the end, with all of the spookery and cold and stuff, shaking around the house and all of that, was also kind of a slow mover. I get it; it's kind of necessary, but I don't like it. So I'm going to say that right at the outset. I'll have more to say about that in a little bit. Okay, so what's good about this episode? The IMF earns its victory here. I remember this episode and really not liking it, but now that I'm looking at it objectively here, this was a really earned win. Connie is not the sharpest knife in the drawer, to say the least, but Bert Gordon is actually a competent villain. What I liked is I look back and I said, here's a guy who is not going gaga over cinnamon, at least not excessively above the normal amount that I guess a normal red-blooded American male would, which is good. He wants to stay out of it. He's not distracted by her, which, gosh, you'd lose count very quickly of how many antagonists do actually fall into that trap. So that's good. The fight scene where Jim knocks out Connie and tries to strangle Bert Gordon, that was actually really well done. I really liked Peter Graves kind of really got into that. I think he was really enjoying himself in that one. And overall, it's a decent plot. It's not really the kind of episode that I really go for, but it's okay. I will say this. It's one of the episodes where obviously there's a heavy use of the supernatural and spookery, as I call it. And generally speaking, all of the episodes that have come and will come that depend on this are not very good. This is the best of those episodes, but that is not saying much. Okay, given that it's 1967, this episode won a lot of awards. It won several Emmys for things like lighting and production, and it deserves that. The presentation is really quite good. But I don't like episodes that depend on that kind of spookery. Generally speaking, they don't work well, and this is really the exception, although it cuts it fine in my opinion. Another thing, I mentioned that the character of Bert Gordon is competent, and that's really, really good. He's not a schmuck. He's not lame. However, unfortunately, I must say that his actor, Gerald O'Loughlin, there's again just something about him that is a little bit of a downer. Not so much in this episode. Maybe, unfortunately, I'm thinking of another episode in season 6 called Shape Up, which he also guest stars in. And in that one, that also happens to be an episode where the IMF uses these same sort of tactics, where they bring people back from the dead and there's a spook fest and all sorts of these weird goings on. And I just remember saying, my gosh, this guy, I don't know, he just doesn't belong on this show. Not his fault. Not everybody is a fit for this show. But he's not engaging. I will say that, which is one of the kisses of death. But again, not a bad performance in any sense of the word. Just not a great fit. Just not the kind of episode that I really get into. Anyway, that's my review. Please like this video. Please subscribe to my channel. Please leave your comments. I'd love to hear what other people have to say. As always, thanks again, and I'll see you next time.